So Jonathan, it, we're picking it up after a little bit of technical difficulties, but here we go. Like Jacob had made a lot of wrong moves here, and he's going to cap it off with, I think, this is there's some scholarly debate on this, but I think a very deceptive move on his part because we're coming to the end of the scene. And the dialogue goes like this. So now they're done talking about what's going to be done with the stuff. And they come to this agreement that Esau is going to take it all. And then Esau says, "Well, let's stick together. Let's be on our way, and I'll accompany you." And this is where Jacob continues stiff arming his twin. He makes what I think is a little bit of an excuse, and like he's trying to let his brother down easy. And he says, "Well, my Lord knows," and that's key. He doesn't say my brother. He says my Lord. It's that king's and subject relationship that Jacob insists on having with his brother. He says, "My Lord knows that the children are tender, and I must care for the ewes and cows that are nursing their young. If they're driven hard just one day, all the animals will die." Okay, okay, Jacob.
You
It's
know, no,
some
exactly. You can read, I suppose you could read that like, okay, yeah, okay, okay, Jacob. I, it's the thing is, when you read this, this is a very complete explanation. You know, it's a very complete explanation of caring for his tender children, cattle, and Esau shouldn't wait up. Go on ahead, I'll meet you at Seir, right? Very complete explanation. And if we didn't have a whole story ahead of this, if we didn't see all the ways that he was behaving exactly in line with this, we might be able to read that as like very upfront. He's just, but I think we have too many exegetical reasons, too much exegetical momentum, too much story here for us to read this as as something other than sounds like an excuse, Jacob.
right, and because what he then goes on to say, um, "Let my Lord go ahead while I move along slowly at the pace of the flocks and herds before me, and the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord and Seir." And then Esau's like, "Okay, that's fine. Let me leave some of my men with you." Um, and that may have sounded a little bit menacing to Jacob, like, "Oh, so now I'm
No, 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 no.
no, that's
That's not
okay."
necessary. Why do that?
So there, yeah, don't do that. Just let me find favor in the eyes of my Lord. And so they part ways. And Esau goes to Seir. And then we're told in verse 17, this is devastating. Jacob, however, went to Succoth. So they had basically this is what happens is they make this agreement. Jacob's going to go more slowly, Esau's going to go on ahead, and they were going to meet up in Seir. And Jacob went to Succoth. Now,
Yeah,
like,
and there's
what are we supposed to do with that? Like, are we? And this is a difficult thing to interpret. Like, did Jacob was this a bold-faced lie?
well, we got two problems. And the one problem is Jacob was so he was supposed to go to Bethel, Timothy. He he had promised to go to Bethel, and he doesn't. So that's the first problem. The Lord's going to have to get him to go to Bethel, and we'll see that in Genesis chapter 35. But the other problem that we have here is that Jacob straight up goes the other direction from his brother. Like if you look on a map, and the Bible here is assuming that we know this, but we might not know this because we're not native to this part of the world. But if you actually look at a map, it's Esau goes south and Jacob goes north. So it's not, he's going the other way. It does not look
Yes.
good.
So the equivalent in my part of the country is it would be to say, let's meet up in Washington, D.C., and you have that agreement, and then Esau goes to Washington, D.C., but Jacob goes to Maine. That's
Right.
the that's the equivalent of this.
Yep.
And so like it it's super problematic, and it's hard to read Jacob up. In other words, it's hard to think, oh, something must have came up that forced Jacob to to violate his word that he gave to his twin Esau. It You almost have to assume, and I don't really want to, but you almost have to assume that Jacob actually had no intention whatsoever of being close to his brother Esau for reasons that remain unstated here, and that he actually, like, after this beautiful moment of reconciliation, it's another bold-faced deception.
Either way, he doesn't keep his word. Look, Victor Hamilton is a commentator on this um, part of the Bible here, and he's got what I think is a very perceptive analysis of what happened here and the relationship with Jacob and Esau. And he writes about this incisively and beautifully. And he thinks about the first time that the relationship blew up, and then he compares it to this time. And what he says is, on the first occasion, Esau failed to perceive Jacob's capacity for exploitation. On the second, and now he's talking about this one, he fails to perceive Jacob's hesitancy and lack of excitement about going to see her. In both cases, Jacob succeeds in deceiving Esau. And so basically what Victor Hamilton is saying, and honestly, this is how I read the story too, is that Jacob becomes Jacob again. And we have this case where Jacob the deceiver becomes Jacob the deceiver again. And to me, it reminds me of a video my daughter showed me where there was this, maybe you've seen it, it's kind of big deal on um, these viral videos or whatever, but there's this sheep that had gotten stuck in this trench, and this man hauls the sheep out of the trench, and the sheep gets out of his grasp and runs joyfully away and jumps right back into the trench and gets wedged right back in there. And I think that's actually what we see here in Jacob's life. Jacob, the Lord gave Esau right back into his arms. He got him out of the trench, and Jacob jumped right back in it. He just did Jacob again. And it's quite tragic and sad to see it.
Well, I mean, it's devastating. Like, the way I think about it is this: like, did you know this about teeth? I had to do Invisalign. I'm not going to get into all the details, but I had to. Like, the orthodontist, like, no, this isn't going to work. So I get Invisalign in my 40s. And what I didn't know is if you don't wear retainers for the rest of your life, your teeth will go right back. And so here's a biblical truth then. This is a biblical truth about human nature, that we can revert all the way back to our old self in a split second. You can. And like, when people talk about transformation, I think we have to think about that biblically. Like, what is it that is being transformed? Is it the old man? This is what we talk about in theology, right? Can you reform, like Luther would talk about this? Can you reform a refractory ass? And I'm sorry for being so blunt about it. The answer is no. That part of us is always going to be there, which means that every single human being is always capable of doing what they've done in the past. and I know that this is what we have in Lutheran theology. Like this is simul justus et peccator. This is the fact that we are righteous and sinful at the same time. This is what Paul talked about. This is the daily struggle of setting aside the old and putting on the new. And Jacob lost for a second here. He put on the old and didn't and he set aside the new. He reverted back. And in some ways, like I think this works on two levels, Jonathan. This is how I've been thinking about it. Um, and it cuts in two ways. First of all, this says something about us. It says something about us. Like Israel um, is also Jacob, and Jacob is also Israel. We are sinners, and we are saints, and we are saints who are sinners. And this needs to, in a sense, put the fear of God in our hearts. If we're thinking like, oh, I'm a brand new person, I would never do that again, that's when you're right to do it again and not to learn the lessons of the past. Um, we're forgiven. Thanks be to God, we're forgiven, but we are always going to be capable of reverting back. This cuts another way though, and this I think is about setting expectations for reconciliation, expectations for reconciliation. So when Jacob and Esau have this amazing moment, here's what we have to understand, that even when we get those amazing moments, we have to understand that the person may and could and maybe even will sometimes revert all the way back to their old self. And none of that should surprise us. Have they changed? Like, here's the question, like, to put it bluntly and maybe in more modern day terms, do people change? And this story is giving us a an an answer that, um, in a certain way,
I mean,
do people
Esau did.
change?
Esau did.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We're looking at and
Esau
I
did.
look. I was watching a silly show. It really was a silly show, and the mother was always lying to her son in this silly show that I was watching. And then a friend said this to the son who was always being lied to, who was trying to believe that his mom had changed. And the friend said, in my experience, people do change, but rarely when you want them to. So it's not in our timing. And it's always possible that for the moment, they'll lose the battle with their sinful nature and revert right back. And that doesn't mean we should cut them right off again. It's just to say we need to set our expectations. And the only way, this is true of any relationship, this is deeply true. The only way that any relationship can last, reconciled or not, is if we share the same grace with each other that we have received from God in Christ. Because people are messy, and Jacob will sometimes be Israel, and Israel will sometimes be Jacob. This whole thing reminds me of, our sister Abigail loves that musical Les Miserables, and it's a musical that, um, in the guts of it, in the heart of it, it what it's a beautiful, beautiful musical, but it's about how human love cannot save us because it will never be perfect. That's really what the messaging in that story is. It's beautiful. Human love cannot save us. Human relationship cannot save us. And you've articulated beautifully why.
because we're in it, you know, because we're in it. And so it can never be our proper hope. And honestly, in this life, we cannot hope to fix it. We cannot hope to have relationships that are going to be apocalyptically fulfilling. You know, we cannot hope for that. The best we can hope for is to have moments like Esau and Jacob had. And then guess what? It's back to life. You know, it's back to forgiving. It's back to working at it, communicating, and all that stuff. And so in Les Miserables, Valjean asking ends up dying and asking God to forgive him and lead him to true salvation. So we can realize in this that we need the forgiveness of God, and our only hope is for true salvation is him. He's the one who can finally get us to this place where we can see each other. And it's like Jacob said, it's like actually Jacob said, it's like seeing the face of God, you know, because that's what Jacob said. Having relationships that are truly reconciled, that that's dependent on God. That and 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 Timothy, this is where I want to get I do want to get apocalyptic, because what Jesus came and said in the New Testament is that God is yearning for us to come home. And that's the story of the prodigal son, that we'd come home, and that when we get home, that we're going to see our Father, because of the perfect work of Jesus Christ, running at us, falling on us, embracing at us, hugging us, kissing us. And Jesus has reconciled us to God. And so that we can end with him in a place where we are we are seeing each other in perfect reconciliation, but finally the face of God himself, which is the greatest thing of all, the face of God himself, loving us, forgiving us, holding us, loving us. This is what we're all waiting for, and it is all ours in Jesus Christ our Lord, who is the son of Jacob.